When I watch some people coding online, their workstation and IDE setup just works so well. I wanted to start documenting how to create that type of setup. The competence of the setup itself is just so powerful. This video series is my attempt to document how to create that competent workstation setup. I understand this will be a moving target as tools and systems change. I also know that I will miss things and there will be other better ways to do this. I hope others will comment with ways to improve this setup so we all can have that cool, powerful setup to code on. Development environment involves resetting the PC back to default Windows. There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can download the Windows Media Creation tool. Doing this will let you create a bootable USB drive that you can use to reinstall Windows from scratch. But if you already have Windows installed, specifically Windows 11, you can run setup. And from there, you can select system. From there, you can select recovery. Reset this PC. We're going to remove everything. Going to do a local reinstall. The difference between a local reinstall and a cloud download, the cloud download would give you the latest and greatest updates. The local reinstall will use your local copy of Windows to reinstall from. This is usually much faster. We'll give it a second to think about what we've asked it to do. And we will confirm that we want to reset this PC back to its default state. We'll fast forward through the rest of this. So now here we are back, and our fresh install is now asking us for our country. I'll go ahead and answer that. But before I continue, I am going to disconnect from the internet. You can't see it, but I'm unplugging the Ethernet card from this PC, or Ethernet cord, sorry. And I'm going to press Shift F10, and I'm going to type OOBE, OOBE/ DYPASSNRO. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to install Windows without connecting the PC to a Windows or to a Microsoft account. Specifically, it's not going to connect to my Microsoft account for sharing files or software or that kind of thing. This is not something you have to do if you would like to connect your PC to a Microsoft account. And of course, if you're on a corporate network, you may be required to connect your PC to a Microsoft account. But this is something I do because I like to keep my machines independent as much as possible from cloud services, just because. So here we are again. I'll select the United States and a US keyboard, and I'm going to skip the alternate layouts. I am going to say I do not have internet. And if you didn't type that OOBE bypass, you won't get this option to continue with limited setup. So I'm going to continue with limited setup so I can have local only install. I'm going to agree to the license. I'm going to enter a username. I'm going to skip a password because I'm doing a fresh install and it's going to reboot many times. You can set a password later, but by not setting a password now, it just saves some time. I'm going to turn off all of these data sharing services. Again, this is an optional thing. It's up to you. And here we are with our fresh install. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the system a bit and set it up the way I like it. One of the first things I'm going to do is set up PowerShell on the taskbar. Next thing I'm going to do is right-click and do taskbar settings. Taskbar behaviors. One of the things, I don't really use widgets, so I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to go ahead and turn Copilot off for now. I kind of like task view, so I'll leave it up. I prefer the old school, everything on the left. And that'll do it for the taskbar configuration. I'm going to remove the Microsoft Store from taskbar. And then here, I'm going to go ahead and type updates. I'm going to check for updates. Oh, I also need to reconnect my Ethernet. I'll give it a second for the internet to come back up. And I will retry. Now, some of these steps you can do in parallel. I'm just doing them one by one so that you can see each step so that you don't have to keep track of multiple things. I'm going to go ahead and let it download and install these updates. So now I'll check for updates one more time, just to make sure I've got them all. And sure enough, there's an antivirus update. So again, we'll click check for updates. And with any luck, there won't be any more updates. And sure enough, there aren't. So at this point, I will go ahead and start getting the actual services I use. First of all, I'm not going to sign into Microsoft. I don't want to bring over any data. I'm going to continue without this data. I'm not going to make my Microsoft experience more useful. And like many people, the first thing I'm going to do is download Chrome. Actually, there was an option on here I didn't want checked. I'm going to uncheck automatically sending statistics and download the second copy. So from here, I will run Chrome setup. Yes, going to allow applications to make changes. At this point, we can close Edge. So my purpose for downloading Chrome at this point is so that I can begin getting my sign in into Google So then I will get my password manager, and I can use my password manager to sign into GitHub. So at this point, I will sign into Chrome. And while I sign in, I'm going to pause this recording. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn on sync for Chrome. This is a personal preference. It's up to you. Yes, I'm going to set Chrome as my default browser. Close this. And I'm going to say I got it. And we'll give Chrome just a minute to download the password manager. There's the password manager, and I will pause this video while I sign into the password manager. So now I'm signed into my password manager. So next I will sign into GitHub. And now we're signed into GitHub. The next thing I'm going to do is set up my SSH key. And I'll copy and paste these notes into the comments down below. Take a moment to verify. Uh-oh, looks like we don't have SSH installed yet. So get SSH installed. I'm going to go to Setup. System components. Let's see if we can find OpenSSH. Well, let's just ask the internet. So it says go to Setting System Optional Features. Setting System Optional Features. Let's view our optional features and see if we have OpenSSH. Perhaps they're installed. SSH client and SSH server. Let's just check again and see if they're really not there. So I'm going to assume that it didn't get installed because it needs a reboot. So we'll go ahead and reboot at this point. So here we are back after a reboot. Let's just check and see if SSH is available now. Apparently it's the instance of PowerShell we're running. So we will pin this version of PowerShell to the taskbar. For those of you that didn't see, PowerShell x86 was what I was trying to run things in, and just Windows PowerShell is the one that supports SSH. A little bit of live debugging there. So we're going to generate our SSH key. And again, I will put these notes in the comments of this video. Take a moment to read it over, make sure it's correct. Yes, I'm going to skip a passphrase for now. And now we have our SSH key. Now the reason for the SSH key, and the reason I do that as part of the base install, is so that we can use that in our GitHub. So let's connect our GitHub account to our SSH key. For that, we will go to Settings, SSH and GPG keys, add new SSH key. I'll come back to PowerShell and I will cd into .sh. If I do a directory on this, we'll see two different files. Notice that one says pub, that is our public key. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you my public key. And yes, by the time I post this video, I will have changed it. So I'm going to take and copy this public key. Here into GitHub so that it will link my account to that SSH key. So now we will test that key. The easiest way to test that key is to use SSH. So I will SSH to get at github.com. Yes, I'm going to save that fingerprint. And again, not sure what's going on. Perhaps I typed the wrong thing. I hit enter, and there were two enters after that. And so if you notice it paused, just hit enter. But this successfully authenticated tells me that I have connected my SSH key from my local machine up to my GitHub account. That comes in really handy later. So next, let's go ahead and install Linux for Windows. So to do that, we'll do a WSL-install. And yes, I want to allow it to make changes. And this is going to be a little bit of a wait, so again, we'll fast forward through. And yes, we're going to allow changes. Okay, we have successfully installed, and now we will just wait. We will not wait. We will close this window, and we will reboot the system. So now we, in essence, have two operating systems. We have Windows and we have a Linux operating system. I'm going to go ahead and pin the shortcut to Ubuntu to the taskbar. We'll go ahead and go into Linux. We'll give it a few minutes to finish installing. Not sure what's going on there. We'll go ahead and press any key. We'll go ahead and create our username. Create a password. And now, just like Windows before it, we will update Windows or update Linux. First, we'll do an apt-get update, and that will update the list of packages. For those of you that don't know, you probably need to do a sudo. We'll let it update the list of packages installed. And next we'll do a sudo apt-get upgrade. And this will upgrade the packages that are on our Linux environment. Again, we'll let that run for a minute. So now we have our Windows updated and our Linux updated. So now we're ready to install Docker Desktop. We'll go ahead and pin this guy to our taskbar. We'll go ahead and download for Windows. Now we'll install. As soon as it gets done doing its virus scan, I guess. And we'll go ahead and open to restart the installer. We'll start it the old-fashioned way. There we go. And yes, all that looks good. And now we can close and restart to finish the Docker desktop install. So we'll give it just a minute. I think Docker desktop should pop up here in a second. Now we can complete installing Docker Desktop. We'll accept the license agreement. I'm going to continue without signing in. And obviously, I'm a full stack developer doing learning or teaching. And we have completed the install. Next, we'll move on to SSH Agent. So looks like to set up SSH Agent, it is not in that document. Perhaps. That doesn't look. Let's try setup. I'm not finding what I want there either. Let's try. There we go. And I will start a administrator PowerShell. Yeah. So running this command tells Windows to set up SSH Agent and tell it to start up automatically when Windows starts. And now I'll reboot so that SSH Agent is restarted. Now we'll just start a regular PowerShell, and we will do an SSH add. And what this is going to do is add our SSH key so that SSH Agent can pass it through to services that need it. We can check this with an SSH add and a -L, I believe, and you should see your key listed as a available key to be shared to other services. Now what this allows us to do is this will allow Docker builds access to our SSH key for private repositories. Next we'll go ahead and get Git for Windows. We'll go ahead and download the 64-bit. Now we'll open this, start our git install. We're going to accept the license. We're going to install in the default location. We're going to allow it to check for updates. We're going to add it to the profile. And all of that looks good. We'll go on to next. We'll put it in the Git file menu. Here, I'm going to change the editor to Notepad. You can use whatever editor you like, and if you have a favorite editor, you should install it before you install Git. That way it'll be in this drop-down. You won't have to go through any editing of files. I'm going to let Git decide. I don't want to override the default branch name for new repositories. Git from the command line and also from third-party software. That's what I'm going to go ahead and install because your IDE is a third-party software. I'm going to use the external SSH because I installed OpenSSH and set up OpenSSH that was bundled with Windows. So I'm going to use the native Windows secure channel library. The reason is that when you're dealing with a corporate network, you probably want to be able to use their certificates, and this just will save you some headache. Now here is a tricky bit. This is the last vestige of the character set encoding wars from the 70s and 80s. Windows and Apple and Linux have different line ending characters. If you want to avoid starting a war with your fellow developers on your same team, you'll leave it as checkout as is, commit as is, and not touch the file. Don't change the files unless you absolutely have to. You will see that bash shell scripts will be corrupted, other such nonsense. So let's just leave it as is and correct when you need to. I'm going to use Windows default console window. I don't actually use Git that often from the command line, but when I do, I usually just want to use the console window. I'm good with fast forward or merge. I do not want Git to use any credential managers. I actually set up SSH for that purpose, so I'm going to use the classic SSH. I am going to allow file system caching. I'm going to enable symbolic links. Not sure how that really interacts with Windows, but I'm going to leave it anyway. I'm not going to get experimental, and now we'll wait for the install. So I'm going to skip the README. I'm going to go ahead and finish. And then I'm going to go ahead and reboot so that all the paths are set up correctly. So now, with any luck, we have Git available, and we can run our next critical test. So I am going to go ahead and clone my test project. Better go find it. What this test is going to do is make sure that my SSH key is available inside Docker so that my build will complete correctly. And I'll post a link to this test project in the comments. So now I'm going to change into that project directory. And I am going to run the test. And this will take a minute. Or not. Are we in the right place? Actually, the command is docker compose build SSH test. My apologies. Docker is not set to auto start. So let's go ahead and start Docker. That would help. If you ever want to see the status of Docker, just click on this and watch this icon. And there's our Docker. Now let's see if our test runs. And this is the message we're looking for. Successfully authenticated, but GitHub does not provide shell access. What that tells us is that from inside our Docker builds, we can connect to GitHub to pull private repositories. For those of you that don't use private repositories, probably not a big deal, but for those of us in the corporate world, this has significant meaning, especially with corporate world GitLab or GitHub, Bitbucket, and GitLab. So next we'll go ahead and install our Jetbrains toolbox. We'll go ahead and download that. We'll go ahead and run the installer. I believe I double started the installer. Yes. So now we have our Jetbrains toolbox. Go ahead and get signed in. I always want the dark mode. We're going to use the same language for all tools, dark, and we'll get started. And I had hoped. Yes, we'll go ahead and get logged in. We're going to approve. And we're going to open Jetbrains toolbox. And somehow we started another download. We'll let that finish and then we'll close out all these tabs. So now my Jetbrains is installed. I can begin installing my IDEs that we'll leave for another video. The final touches I like to put in are linking across the systems. So one of the things that I like to be able to do is link to Linux from Windows and in Windows. I can never remember what this directory is. Usually something like that. So what I'm going to do is go over here to File Explorer. Home. So for those of you that might not recognize this, the //WSL is Windows Services for Linux. $ means service, I believe. Ubuntu, after that, the home directory. So if we start a Linux session and we do a pwd, you'll see that we're in home JStorms. So if we do $, home JStorms, we should be in the same directory that we are here. And sure enough, we see .aws.azure.bash history. So that is the same directory. So what I'm going to do is I am going to create a shortcut to my Unix home directory over here so I can quickly get to it. So by clicking here, I can get quickly into my Linux directory. Now I'd like to be able to do the same thing from Linux. So I'm going to type mount and take a look and see. Looks like it's on mount WSL. No, that doesn't look correct. Mount, no. Mount WSL. So let's take a look at mount WSL. That's Docker. We don't want that. It doesn't look like what we want. Let's try one more time. There we go. Mount C. So if we go to /mount mnt/c and we do an ls, we can find our Windows files. So now we're connecting our Linux file system to our Windows file system so we can quickly navigate between the two. So what I want to do is I want to link symbolically, and I always get these parameters confused, C to /mnt/c. Let's go the other way. Maybe we need to do this. Mount link symbolic mount C to a directory called C. So now if we do an ls-l, we'll see that we have a folder called C that goes to our C drive. So when we cd into C, we see our Windows file system. That's just a sample of a way to create shortcuts that can quickly get you between the two systems and share files between the two systems. And that, in a nutshell, is what I consider the minimum base to start installing my development software. Please stay tuned. There'll be more coming, and I'll have some ideas in a moment or in next videos. Thank you for your time. It's been about 2 hours, which seems about right to rebuild the system to the point of being able to install development software. At this point, I've spent about 2 hours just laying the groundwork. I've set up SSH Agent, Git, and Docker. In the following videos, I will set up the Jetbrains IDEs for PHP, TypeScript, and C#. So like and subscribe to follow along.